Hello everybody, welcome to this video which I have been very excited to make. I've actually talked about making this since October, but as the months went on I was feeling like maybe I needed to wait just a little bit because we're still a couple of months out from these big transits that I'm going to talk about today, but we're getting closer, and so now it's really time to truly get prepared for this. So 2023 is going to be defined by that transition of specifically 3 planets. Okay, Pluto is number 1, Saturn is number 2, and Jupiter is number 3. Now, really though, we're kind of looking at like a 3 to 4 year period between 2023 and the whole of 2026. Because around 2026, we're going to be in a completely different landscape than what we are today, okay? There's just a lot of movement. I know that like thinking about 3 years down the road is a little bit weird, but I do think it's important for you when you're thinking about your goals and thinking about your life and thinking about what kind of world you want to create for yourself. I want to kind of start this video by isolating some of the transitions. We'll start with Pluto coming into Aquarius, and then we'll move on to Saturn, and then we'll talk about Jupiter, and we'll bring in Uranus a little bit as well, Chiron and Neptune as well. They're going to be a big part of it too. As you'll notice in this chart, I don't have the sun or Mercury, Mars, or Venus because they move so quickly. And when we are talking about years at a time, it's probably best to just kind of like leave those out. You know, yes, there will be retrogrades for each of them. There will be certain like hot points where they come, you know, and that's just kind of normal stuff. But when we're taking a look at the big things, I kind of just want to leave those out. Now, this is actually my favorite kind of video to make. You guys need to know, who don't know me, okay, I'm a Libra rising, which means I have Sagittarius in the 3rd house, Gemini in the 9th house, and I have my Mercury in the 12th house. So this is really like my whole, like, this is what I love to talk about, okay? I really, really love to talk about this kind of stuff. It's one of my favorite ways to approach things. People sometimes get annoyed with me because they're like, you talk and like, can't you just give us the transits for the week? And I'm like, yes, I could, but you also need to know the big stuff. So this is like really my wheelhouse here. Oh, you know what? Shoot, I completely... Okay, before we really get started on the individual astrology or the individual planet astrology, I wanted to first go into this by taking a look at the Yuga. Now, I made a video back in 2020. It's still on my channel, I think. I don't think I deleted it. Where I kind of, it was in 2020. It was right during the pandemic. And it was like, WTF is going on? Are we in for the next revolution? That kind of thing. And I didn't fully review that because I'm like, I don't want to sit there for like an hour and a half, 2 hours rewatching myself. So, but I do know for a fact that I think I did something wrong in that video, okay? And that was my explanation of the Yugas. Over the past couple of years, I've learned a little bit more information about the Yuga system, and I just wanted to kind of clarify. Now, I talked about this with my Soul Seekers group already, so they're probably just going to get a little bit of a repeat. But those of you who are not a part of my Soul Seekers group, this is still going to be really important for you to understand the grand context of everything that's going on. Now, the Yuga system is really from Vedic astrology from India, okay? And they have kind of separated this circle here. Now, this is like a 26,000 plus year period of time. All right. And this has to do with the precession of the equinoxes, has to do with our positioning in the galaxy, in the solar system, our relationship with the black hole at the center of the galaxy and with a sister star that they clearly believed was that we were part of a binary star system. And so they've derived these kind of time frames. Now, I don't have the breakdown of the time frames here. It doesn't really matter the exact, but I think we all know, or we can tell, that we as a collective are kind of coming out of the quote unquote Iron Age or the Dark Age or the Kali Yuga. All right. Now, the Kali Yuga is a period of time where there was not a lot of education. A lot of the ancient wisdom was hidden. There was a lot of persecution. There was a lot of oppression and all those kinds of things. And as we can see, a lot of human history. These are like literally thousands of years, okay? Past several thousands of years, all of recorded human history really takes place between the descension in the Bronze Age, descending through the Bronze Age and descending through the Kali Yuga. And then we are starting to make our way on the ascent. And many people believe that we are on the ascent into this Bronze Age, or what's called the Dwapara Yuga, okay? Now, there's a lot of debate out there. I can't get specifics because there are so many people that say so many different things, and I don't want to put out misinformation, all right? But a lot of people agree that the 1700s and 1800s is really when we started to make this transition out of the Kali Yuga and into the Dwapara Yuga, and that we are still kind of in this twilight zone area between the two, as we can see with these kind of lines here and here, okay? So this is why in New Age spirituality, we talk about ascension all the time. This is what it's referring to. It's referring to the ascension into the Golden Age. Now, the Golden Age is like thousands of years away. It's not like we're not going to be alive for it, you guys, unless we come back in reincarnate or whatever. But we are ascending nonetheless, and we're moving out of the Kali Yuga, which is the age of materialism. And then we move into the age of energy, which we are seeing huge things and huge developments with energy already, right? We're seeing it with the advent of the internet, with our own understanding of our own energetic field and the way our brain works. We're seeing, all these different types of, solar energy and whatnot, and all these different kinds of things kind of coming out. Now, technology is just like in its very baby infant stages right now. And over the course of the next few thousand years, we can only imagine, if humanity survives, like how much bigger and how much better and how much more improved it's only going to get. Now, the reason why I'm so optimistic is because it is the ascension and we are moving toward the golden age. We're not coming away from it, where this is the darkest time. And if we look back in history, 4,000, 3,000, 1,000 years ago, it was a pretty dark time on planet Earth. There was a lot of war, a lot of murder, a lot of just really, really bad stuff. I'm not saying the bad stuff is going to go away right now, right? Not in this age, not right now, but we are starting to see a lot less of that, and it's a lot less prominent in a lot of people's lives. Not everyone had a soldier, had a son go to war. Not everyone had, not saying it's perfect, but we're definitely coming out of that like really dark time. Okay. So with this context, it's going to be important to remember this context, because as we are focusing on these planets, this is just a very teeny tiny fragment of what's going on in the grand scheme of everything that is meant to help humanity ascend. All right. So I want to talk first about Pluto. Now, Pluto is touching ground in Aquarius this March for the very first time in 248 years. Okay. It takes him a very long time. He's like the slowest moving planet in our solar system to make a full revolution here. And he's coming back into Aquarius. Now, we talk all the time about how this is where Pluto was, okay, from a United States perspective, and I'm not saying we're the most important country in the world, but we just went through our our Pluto return. All right, our Pluto came back to where it was when the United States was formed in 1776. And now we're kind of seeing like where we were right around the time of the American Revolution. Before 1776, there had already been a lot of things going on, right? But after 1776 is really when things started accelerating and things started happening. And that's when the real change occurred. So we're kind of coming into 2023 with that kind of energy. Now, Pluto is doing something really interesting. So what I want you to do, I'm going to fast forward this clock on a month-to-month basis. So you'll be able to watch Pluto come into Aquarius and then back into Capricorn and such. So I just want you to follow. Now, when these numbers turn red, this, like this down here, this is an indication that the planet is retrograde. All right, so just pay attention to that. So Pluto comes into Aquarius, boom, there he is, okay? And then retrogrades in May, and then he re-enters in July, okay? Comes back to the 27th degree. Now, why is the 27th degree important? For the United States, now the majority of my audience based on YouTube demographics it's like 90% in the US, but I'm so sorry, you guys, Canadians, Australians, South Africans, the British, like I'm not totally ignoring you guys. It's just that the majority of my audience is in the US, plus I am as well. So it's especially relevant for us. Coming back. Now, this is like the fourth time that it's hit that 27th degree, because in 2022, it already came forward over 27 and then back against 27 and then forward again, 27 again. So now it's coming back for that fourth time. So the US Pluto return is pretty intense going on right now. And then in 2024, we see it coming back into Aquarius again. But that's not all right? Go forward, couple of months, starts to retrograde. Then it comes back again for the second time back into Capricorn, sitting at this 29th degree. Now, the back and forth of Pluto here is actually pretty unique. I had to go back and I was actually like, when was the last time this happened? Because if it happens like every time it switches signs, then it's really not that huge. But it didn't do it between Sag and Capricorn. It didn't do it between Scorpio and Sag. It didn't do it here. It didn't do it here. The last time it did was in 1956 and 1957 when it came into Virgo. It came in and then back into Leo here and then back again. So it was like a whole big thing, just like it's about to be a whole big thing here as well. Now, the reason why this feels a little bit more intense is because this is coupled with Saturn in Pisces. Now, I'm going to talk about Saturn in Pisces in a minute, but I just want you to keep that in mind, that even though I'm going to isolate these particular transits, they are in context with one another. All right, so Pluto officially comes back into Aquarius for good at the very end of 2024. All right, so he's going to do a little like 1 foot in, 1 foot out, like kind of a little bit, but also not really, kind of a little bit, So this hitting that 29th degree, though, is incredibly powerful and potent. Okay, we know that the 29th degree of any zodiac sign is sort of a culmination of like all the energies of that sign. It's a very mature degree. So there's a lot of strength, there's a lot of power that happens there. And Pluto is going to intensify it, because that's what Pluto does. He makes everything a lot more dramatic. Pluto is a planet of power, of money, yes, but it's usually like darker money. There's a lot of like shared resources, taxes, right? That kind of thing. I say darker money. I often equate Pluto energy with like mafia or cartels that are doing a lot of things under the law. I'm very conspiratorial, you guys. So, when I think of like the US government and what happened in 2020, I'm like, that was like a huge like wealth transition situation going on. A lot of above board money laundering type of stuff that was going on. I suspect we're going to see a lot of that type of thing again through 23 and 24, because the economy with Saturn and Pisces is just probably not going to be doing super great. Okay. Now, when Pluto finally finally lands in Aquarius for the next 20 years, okay, he's going to be here until 2044 officially. So between this and 2024, we've got 20 years here. So let's just talk about what this means. So Aquarius, Okay, Aquarius is, first of all, there's a ton of scientific revolution going on. Science and technology is like the premier focus of the world right now. What's interesting is that back in the year 2000, right, little over 20 years ago, we saw the introduction of the internet. And with the introduction of the internet, the entire world changed, right? We then saw cell phones, we saw websites like Google and YouTube and Amazon, and we saw these like giant tech companies just blowing up. We're kind of in those very beginning stages right now with technology and also financial technology as well, with the crypto, blockchain, and digital currencies. All right. There's going to be a massive overhaul of the entire global economic system throughout the next 20 years. And I don't think anyone could logically look at this and doubt that in any way, shape, or form. All right. We also have a lot of humanitarian and environmentalism, a lot of causes and activism coming through. Now, I'm not saying that's necessarily a bad thing. It only really gets bad. I haven't actually really read a lot of the history of Stalin and Mao, but I feel like someone told me once that with General Mao, he raised an entire generation to be an activist. They were all activists, so they would work on behalf of the government. I don't know if that's true or not. Someone could maybe verify, but I'm kind of already seeing that already with the youngsters coming up. There's so much activism, and with Pluto and Aquarius, it's just going to be amplified that much more. Tons and tons of activism for all sorts of causes, whether it's environmentalism or veganism or, certain rights of this or free that or take care of the ocean, whatever. It's going to be all over the place. I mean, it is already, but this is going to be even more prominent and probably more agendized than we probably realize. There's also going to be a lot of separation here because Aquarius has a lot to do with groups and friends and affiliations and clubs and all sorts of things, and also political parties as well. I wouldn't be surprised if we did see the death of one of our political parties. I think especially in the United States specifically, I think the Republican Party I was trying to watch this latest election from a very neutral perspective, from an astrological perspective. I was trying to listen to both sides. I'm a Libra rising, so I'm always trying to listen to both sides because I find truth in everything and I find lies in everything too. So as I was listening and I was watching the numbers and watching the polls, and yet again, we didn't have election results for a really long time. And I was watching the disappointment of the Republican Party because they thought they were going to have this huge red wave, right? Oh, the Republicans are going to come and they're going to, take over all of Congress, and we're really going to... It did not happen, right? Did not happen. And I think the lack of enthusiasm coming from that side of the aisle is really problematic. That side of the aisle is not on message the way the Democrat side is. The Democrat Party, without a doubt, is much stronger and cohesive and unified, whereas the Republican Party, there's we love Trump, or we love DeSantis, or we hate both of them, and let's be more libertarian. It's all very fractured. So if we saw the death of the Republican Party, I would not be surprised. Of course, Pluto is a planet of death. Now, some people will be really happy about that. I don't think you should be that happy about it because we don't want one party to be uber powerful. If anything, I would prefer both parties kind of fracture, because then at least there's more diversity, there are more options, there are all sorts of new things. But, I think with the kind of history of Pluto being in Aquarius, there is a lot of freedom here. So the message of freedom, the message of revolution, the message of change is going to be huge. And for the United States, the next 2 years are election years, right? We have the big election in 2024. And I will tell you that the candidate that offers the most amount of hope is probably going to be the one that wins. All right. Even if it's false hope, it doesn't matter. The one who can sell hope the best is probably going to be the candidate that wins. Now, let's talk about some other themes that we can expect with Pluto through Aquarius. Okay. There is a component of, we want to talk about the aspects. Okay. So it opposes Leo. Now, this is maybe a little bit of a morose thing to approach, but I do think it's important to note that there is a whole massive generation of people that were born with Pluto in Leo, the 40s and 50s, right? This is what we call the boomer generation, right? Millions upon millions of people who are going to be going through a Pluto opposition. And they're getting to that age where many of them will be crossing over. And that can have personal effects, right? Like my parents are in the boomer generation, so there's certainly, personal connection there. A lot of people are going to be losing their parents or their grandparents. But also economically, it's going to have a huge impact as well. There's also going to be a lot of, I don't know how this is going to go in terms of like children and pregnancy, because we know that Leo is where children are. This is the house of children, but Aquarius is kind of the opposite of that. So I don't know if our birth rates are already going down in most, in a lot of countries, the birth rate is already going down. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw an even more drastic decline of the birth rates with Pluto coming into Aquarius, which also could have massive economic impact. A lot of people who are into the environmental aspects say that would be a great thing because the fewer people, the better the planet. And then there are other people who are like, that would be seriously detrimental to the functionality of this world. So wherever you are on the scale, either way, it's probably going to be really coming up over the next 20 years or the birth rates. But it also is a really creative time as well. We know that Leo is the zodiac sign of love and romance and passion and sexuality. And there could most certainly be a lot of expression in that way. Now, I said there could be a decline because Pluto is in opposition with Leo. It is also possible that we could see, I'm totally contradicting myself, but it is possible we could see an increase because of the increase of sexuality. Just really depends. Although I'm leaning more toward a decline, a little bit. Okay. We are starting to see the importance of individuality with a lot of like identity politics, and there's not even just the politics side of it, but just people are more free to express themselves. They're free to identify however they wish to identify. Again, this has nothing to do with whether you agree or not. It just kind of is what's happening culturally. And we know that culture really drives politics. When the culture and the society demands things, the politics is going to have to change. So the politics is definitely going to have to change when Pluto comes into Aquarius. Identity, uniqueness, and really the expression of everything that makes you individually truly unique. And I think we're going to continue even more intensely down that path, the importance of who you are. Now, this can be a really good thing because you can tap into your very special skills. You can tap into all of the things that make you so special, but it can also borderline very narcissistic, specifically with the younger generations who are just being trained right now and who are just kind of being programmed up here, programmed to think so much about themselves. And how weird this weird connection can be, how much we think about ourselves and how that translates into the activism that I talked about. I'm not, again, I keep having to kind of like disclaimer. I'm not saying any of these things are good or bad. It's just kind of the energy at play. He's also aspecting Taurus and Scorpio, which are huge money houses. Okay. So, and we also know that Aquarius is also deeply linked with the speculative markets and also gains, right? A lot of gain comes through Aquarius. Now, when I talk about gain, for those who don't know, it's like when you invest in a stock and that stock appreciates or it goes up, or you've invested in a property and the value appreciates, that profit, right? That's your gain. And so there could be some interesting things going on there as well. I do think we already saw a massive wealth transfer in 2020 with the pandemic. When Saturn comes into Pisces, there's going to be another massive wealth transfer. And it's going to leave a few people with a lot, and it's going to leave a lot of people with little. And taking care of your own personal finances right now is very, very important. Okay? I mean, it always is important, but the gap is getting so severe, right? The middle class is kind of like really disappearing. That center part is really filtering, and it's either taking on more toward the wealthy side or more toward the have-not side, the have versus the have-not, right? It's really thinning out in the middle there. Pluto with Uranus here. Now, these are not necessarily in a square, and they won't be in an official square. Now, Uranus down here has really been preparing for a financial revolution, and that's where a lot of the disturbance really happens. And Uranus being in Taurus is actually, from a U.S. history's perspective, Uranus was here at the beginning of World War II. It was here at the beginning of the Civil War, and it was here at the beginning of the Revolutionary War. When Uranus moved into Gemini, that's when the actual wars, the big ones, like the really notable big ones, took place. And you know, there's a lot of like rumbling happening. And when we think of Uranus, which is, you know, shock and awe and revolution and chaos in stable Taurus, right? That instability kind of coming in and really creating a lot of disruption, that makes sense. But we haven't really seen a massive change or a massive adoption of like digital currency yet, but we will over the next 4 to 5 years. There will be a mass adoption. And then, you know, I don't know if like it's going to be Bitcoin. I mean, there's so many people with so many theories out there, Bitcoin or Ethereum, or if there's going to be a whole new technology that emerges based on the technology that's being developed now that's going to kind of come out on top. Like, you remember when we had, you know, AOL and Netscape, for those of you who were alive at that time. You had AOL, you had Netscape, you had to put the little CD in the thing. You used to get CDs in the mail, right? But it took a while for Google to like really take off. We had Yahoo, right? And for a while it was like Google and Yahoo, but then Google like went through the roof. I don't think we've seen the emergence of Google yet. I don't think we've seen the emergence of eBay. We haven't seen the emergence of the Amazon, of like this digital currency world yet. Some people think that's Bitcoin. I'm a little pessimistic on that just simply because it's too expensive, right? Bitcoin is too expensive to transfer. The gas prices are too high, okay? Or the burn rate, whatever word they use, gas, burn, whatever. It's too expensive. So I think there's going to be a lot of new technology that emerges over the next few years, and we have yet to see like the real behemoths of this industry, and those will likely emerge around the same time that there is some kind of political, foreign affair, war, kind of chaotic thing going on the globe somewhere. Okay. Money and war are so intrinsically connected. And I know people are like, oh, Ukraine, Russia, like, okay, yes, maybe, but I think it's going to be something a little bit bigger than that. I don't know that we've fully seen like the whole thing yet. Because in the past, I mean, I think we would all agree that World War II was a really big deal, right? That was like a huge situation that happened in the US. The Civil War, like, really changed the course of history. So did the Revolutionary War here in the US, French Revolution and all. I mean, there were so many all over the world. I'm only using US history here, but those were the notable ones in the US, and it really did change the course of our entire nation. Everyone was involved, and a lot of things could have been different if those wars didn't happen, okay? I know it sounds a little bit trite to say, but it's true. So it's kind of what we're looking at, which is why you paying attention to your own personal finance is very important. Now, I'm not trying to scare you and say, oh, you got to go, live out in the woods and go get your self-sustainable thing. And, I'm not trying to fear monger here, but at the same time, we are looking at a lot of disruption in the sky, especially in 2025, between 25 and 26, when Uranus comes into Gemini. That's happening around the same time that Saturn is going to be in a conjunction with Neptune for the entire year between 2025 and 2026. They move into Aries, and then they come back into Pisces, and then they move back into Aries, like together. So it's just going to be a very weird time. And whoever wins the election in the US in 2024, I just think it's going to be a losing election. Like, no matter who wins, it's still a loss. It's going to be very hard for any president to come out smelling like a rose. It's just going to be really hard. Yeah, it's just tough. It's going to be a tough time in history. It's growing pains. Do you guys remember when you were a kid? Like, I don't know if every kid went through this, but I'm 5'11". Okay. I'm a pretty tall girl. And I used to like writhe around in my bed when I was like 7, 8, 9, 10 years old. When I was growing, my legs would hurt so badly, and I would cry and I couldn't sleep, and it was so tough. And I feel like ultimately, right, remember Kali Yuga into the Dwapara Yuga, we are ascending, but this is definitely a growing pain period of time. We are completely overhauling the entire financial system right now. And that usually leads to a lot of destabilization. And in order for those who are in control, again, here's my conspiratorial side coming out. In order for those who are in control to stay in control, they have to create a problem so that the wealth transfer can take place with reason. Right? Like, they're not going to give up control. Like, they never have since the beginning of humanity as we know it, right? Since the beginning of hierarchies. Like, it's not, I don't think it's going to change. It's not like all of a sudden all the people are going to have the power right now. No, like the elite people, whoever are way up at the very, very top of this pyramid, they're going to stay up there. They're going to find a way to stay up there. And this right here, what we're looking at, is them figuring out a way to do it. Now, it doesn't mean we can't benefit. It doesn't mean we can't get our own wealth. It doesn't mean we can't go and prosper, because we absolutely can, because Jupiter is doing some pretty phenomenal things for us on a personal level. If you are not getting caught up in like the deprivation and the disparity of Saturn through Pisces, like if you're not getting caught up in all of that, you're going to be fine, right? And a lot of people who are here watching astrology, listening to tarot readings, who are doing the personal work, who are working and creating and coming from a beautiful divine place, you're going to be absolutely fine. And you're just going to be watching the world being like, whoa, this is such a weird place. And it's going to be weird, like really, really weird. Okay. And I actually think this election is going to be one of the weirdest elections we've ever seen. I'm not saying it's going to be like as well. I feel like it's going to kind of be crazier than 2020 was, but it's definitely going to be weirder, okay, in the upcoming couple of years. Okay, so we talked about the money, we talked about the children and the creativity. Now, one of the positive things that I really love about this is the creativity in terms of music and poetry and film. This actually may be like a 3 to 4 period of time where we have some of the best works of art. Saturn through Pisces, Pluto opposing Leo. Some of the best works of art that we've seen in like generations. All right. We're talking about like people who truly will have some degree of immortality. Like how we still recognize Mozart when we hear it, or we still, we still can recognize like Michelangelo when we see it, right? We still like go into his buildings and admire his work. Like that is immortality. And I think that we are going to see certain artists, singers, musicians, whatever, reaching that status. Okay, there is a quality of fame coming through here. Now, there could also be a person who becomes infamous as well, someone who rises to power in an infamous way that will also have some degree of immortality. Okay. So, okay, let's take a look. I'm going to fast forward or move this clock back to today. And let's take a look at Saturn. So let's isolate this Saturn transit here because let's talk about the archetypes now, okay? Pisces, on a positive note, beautiful art and imagination and music and poetry and love. There's a lot of sexuality that comes through Pisces as well. Bed pleasures of the bed, so sex is included in that. On the more negative side, this is where a lot of loss, a lot of illness, a lot of sacrifice, a lot of scarcity, right? Pisces, remember, is the very last zodiac sign. And the very last zodiac sign is that reminder that everything is impermanent, that we are here on this planet for a minuscule amount of time. And like a blink of the eye is our entire lifetime. And it's very easy for things to be taken away from us. And often things are taken away from us with 12th house transits or 12th sign transits, because it's important for us to remember that like this isn't real. It can be taken away. You don't really own any of this. And when we have Saturn, which is a planet of government and structure and the economy and all the financial systems, this is like the dissolution, the dissolving of all of these structures. Now, they're all interconnected, right? We can't say that like our economy and our banking system and our educational system and all, we can't say that any of these things are fully isolated. They're not. They're all interconnected. And so we are going to start to see things faltering. This is what I mean. Probably we may see a death of a political party or the rise of, a whole bunch of other ones or whatever the case may be. Also, culture is really important with Pisces energy too. And also what I mean that culture, Pisces, is going to dictate government policy with Saturn. Now remember, when a planet comes into a new sign, it's kind of like a guest in someone else's house. Saturn's not in rulership anymore. He's not in his own house anymore. He's been home, Capricorn and Aquarius for like 4 years. 2018, 2019, 2020, 21, 5 years. Okay, he's been at home for 5 years. So he's kind of out of his element here. And there is going to be an energy of discomfort. One thing I forgot to point out with Pluto, let's go back just a little bit, is that when Pluto came into Capricorn in 2008, that is when the market crashed. That is when the housing market crashed. Remember, right? Saturn opposing Cancer, housing, house and home. A lot of people lost their homes. A lot of people foreclosed. A lot of people short sold. A lot of banks lost, And so, what was I saying? So when Pluto comes in here into Aquarius, there's that jolt of a change over the next couple of years. Remember, he's going back and forth a couple of times. But then at the same time, Saturn, which is the ruler of Capricorn, comes into its like this really heavy Pisces place. He has to kind of change the rules a little bit. Now, this could really go one of two ways. Now, Saturn coming into the domicile, the Piscean domicile, or the Jupiterian, Jupiter being the traditional ruler of Pisces, he's either going to bring a really somber tone, like to anything, like Pisces is like fairy tale land, right? This is beauty and true love and all the magic of life and the connection with the cosmos and the infinite source and all this boundlessness and limitlessness and all this optimism. It's a very beautiful sign, right? That's why people think it can feel a little delusional because it's not very realistic, right? So But like that's actually a good thing, I think, for people who want to manifest great things. But that's neither here nor there. That's just a personal opinion. But when Saturn comes into Pisces, it can be very sobering. He just kills the fairy tale. He kills the magic, right? And Jupiter, which is all about more and expansiveness, has to like cater to this very cold, bound energy. Okay. It's like having a really strict guest in your home. Like you have to cater to them because they're your guest. You can't kick them out. Like we can't just say, okay, Saturn, speed up. Let's get into Aries already. We can't do that. So we have to just kind of deal with it. This is where he is. So we have to kind of cater to him a little bit, which means Jupiter has to give his like expansive quality over to Saturn a little bit. Now, this can be good because, yes, there can be realism, On the other side, it could also be that Jupiter says, all right, Saturn, you got to chill out. You got to relax. We're going big places and we don't want you bringing us down. So the reality then may give way to the fairy tale and the fantasy. Well, I don't know that either one is like really the best option. It's really important for us to find a balance between these two, because if we're operating too far in one extreme, we're not really tapping into the full benefit of what this could be. Because what Saturn in Pisces could be is that we have big dreams and we want our country and our world and ourselves to go big places. And we want to do beautiful things. We want to create and sing and develop all these beautiful, new cultural movements. And it could be like this whole rebirth of the world. And then we have the Saturnine structure and organization and implementation and the proper hierarchy in which to implement that. But I don't know how well that's really going to go. I don't know that we generally have a lot of balance. As individuals, it's hard enough. As a whole collective, it's really hard. And this is why it's so much easier to separate people than it is to unify them. And this is why there's so much effort out there from, propaganda, news networks, politicians, whatever it is, to separate. Because that means we're weaker, right? And this is what I'm saying, like the politician that sells the most hope, false hope, of course, but the politician who sells the most hope is probably going to win on that. Because I actually feel like Saturn, like where there could be massive economic growth, I feel like, because the reason why I say that is because of Jupiter. Because Jupiter is going to be coming into Taurus, which means there could be huge increase in terms of personal finance. And we're going to see that. We're going to see a lot of people making a ton of money. Like if you don't know how to take care of your money, this is going to be a very volatile time. and where there's going to be a lot of loss as this structure starts to dissolve. And when I say structure, you guys, I mean structure. We've already seen issues with shortages this year. We saw the baby formula shortages. We saw a lot of issues with oil and gas. And by the way, Pisces Neptune is connected with oil and gas. We saw a lot of, issues with supply chain. We saw a lot of issues with travel, specifically like airline travel, international airline travel. It was very chaotic throughout 2021 and even a little bit in 2022. It was really bad in 2021 when Saturn was in Aquarius, but now, he's kind of finishing that out now, but I don't know that that's really going to stop. Because if we are dissolving supply chains or dissolving suppliers, we're only really hurting ourselves in some way. And if we hurt ourselves, we really could be in a very despairing place economically. And I'm talking about this on a global scale, because we're also interconnected now. No one is self-sustaining like certain countries could be. But I think, we found the benefit of working together as a whole. If this country has these resources and we have these resources, why not trade? Obviously, that's how it's all determined, right? You do this very well, we do this very well, but we need this and you need this, so let's swap. But if all of a sudden this person can't do this anymore, this nation can't do this anymore, we cut them off for some reason, well, now we don't have what they have. And we can't get what they have, and it's going to take us a really long time to produce the systems and the infrastructure in order to produce what they have. So there is going to be some kind of a shortage of some kind. So yeah, if there are greater shortages, I'm not guaranteeing that that's the case, but if there are issues like that, then it can be really, really scary for a lot of people who don't understand, because let's be honest, the majority of people just don't really understand. And they're not, maybe self-aware enough to look within and do all the work and all that. I think people who are here who have done the work are going to be totally fine. It's just, it's just going to be hard to watch, and it's going to be hard to see. And, let's talk a little bit about the illness factor of this as well. Now, I'm going to kind of do a little sidebar here. So throughout my health journey, you guys know, stage 5 kidney failure, was on dialysis twice, worked very, very hard with my diet and with doctors and functional medicine people and nutritionists and Ayurveda and homeopaths and all the things, acupuncture, everything, to really, get myself to a place where I was healthy again. Okay. It's been a very challenging couple of years for me. And one of the things the first time this happened in 2021, when my kidneys first went out, a lot of people recommended medical medium. Now, medical medium is a really controversial person because he claims that he gets all of his information from the spirit of compassion, and he's not a doctor and all these things, right? So yes, he's really controversial, and a lot of people really don't like him. I read his books. I read one book, and then I read another, and then I read another and another. I think I have like 6 of his books now, and he has literally changed my life, okay? It is without a doubt 100% because of what I learned from him that I am where I am today. Now, everyone involved is a part of it as well, but I think he was like the information that I gleaned from him was the most relevant, all right? Now, one of the things, I pay attention to him, okay, is what I'm saying. I pay attention to him. And one of the things that I have heard him say consistently is that over the next couple of years, we are going to see massive waves of illness. And we could speculate as to the reason why, but there are, when I look at this transit, Saturn in Pisces, I absolutely could be like, yes, I agree, I concur. And the reason why I told that medical medium story is just simply because, he does claim, and a lot of people, a lot of testimonials, whatever, say he has psychic abilities. I don't really know about all that, but I do know that what I've learned from him has been exceptionally helpful. So I tend to take, my ears perk up when he says something like that. And then I look at the astrology and I see Saturn in Pisces, where a lot of illness, right? Pisces is about hospitals. I wouldn't be surprised if we had a shortage of hospitals. Do I think it's going to be another pandemic? Not necessarily, no. Although there was some weird stuff with Bill Gates throughout 2020 where I kept seeing clips of this. I don't know how current it was or whatever. There was a lot of stuff, a lot of conspiratorial stuff flying around. I got really caught up into the conspiracy stuff in 2020 because I was just sitting there on Instagram and TikTok and whatever. But Bill Gates came out and said several times that the next time this happens, the next pandemic, right? And that was very strange. And although I don't know that it's going to happen in 23 and 24, I think if that were to happen, again, and I'm not fear-mongering here, I'm not trying to anyway, I'm just saying that it was weird that I saw videos of him saying that if they weren't deep fakes, but if that were to happen, it probably would happen in 2025 and 2026 when Saturn comes into this conjunction with Neptune. Actually, let me just kind of fast forward the clock here. Okay, so we have, here we are in April 2025. We can see also we have the North Node coming into Pisces as well. Saturn, now we have Neptune entering into Aries as well. Remember, Aries is ruled by Mars, and Mars can be, of course, exceptionally aggressive with illnesses. So if there's something that kind of begins maybe in 2024, it probably will start to really ramp up in 2025. Okay. And then we have Saturn and Neptune coming very close together here in Aries. And then they're going to retrograde back into Pisces together, very close again, hitting back up against that 29th degree. North Node is still in Pisces. And then they're going to move back into Aries together in 2026. So if that were to happen, I would speculate 25 or 26. And don't forget that there is a lot of, we are going to start to see the crossing over of many of the boomer generation. Again, I don't mean to be morose. I know I have a lot of boomers on my channel. We love you. We love our parents. My parents are boomers. They were born in the 40s. But, the 20-year period is a very long stretch of time. So I do think that that's, something that we are going to see. And that is all happening. Well, Uranus comes into Gemini in 2025. Okay, remember, so this is happening. Pluto is now officially in Aquarius. So he's fully settled at this time. We have Uranus coming into Gemini. So this is really when we're going to start to see the mass adoption of the digital currency. Now, remember, right now, a lot of our central banks are trying to figure out how they can issue their own digital currency so that it can't be decentralized, right? Because that's the big threat with crypto right now, is that it's decentralized. So they're not going to have control over it. I don't think they're going to really let that happen. I simply don't. As good as it all sounds very wonderful and very beautiful, but I just don't know that we're there yet. I don't know that we're there at a time when I say the elites, I don't mean the presidents. I mean the trillionaire people. Okay, the very, very select few at the very top. They're not gonna just be okay, I guess we're done. New technology is coming. Okay, I guess we can let the people, be free. Come on now. That's not going to happen, right? So this disruption, so if there's a war, or if there is something brewing politically or economically, or if there is some massive economic downturn, because, Neptune is a really despairing planet as well. He's he's the other ruler, the more modern ruler of Pisces. He confuses things a lot. He's completely the opposite of Saturn, and this is just going to create a lot of confusion and a lot of people aren't going to know what the heck is going on at this time. They're just they're just not going to be able to see. It's just going to be a very weird time when I think leadership is going to be questioned. Again, it doesn't matter who gets in the White House or who takes, power of Congress, Senate, the House. It doesn't matter which party is in power. I don't think the people are really going to be looking at the government as true leaders. I think the government as a whole is going to fall from grace at this time, and their amount of power is going to be like they're going to be at the mercy of the people. Like, whatever the people want, we will do. And all the activism going on here, right? There's going to be a huge wave and a huge push for new law and new societal structure and a new way of life, and technology is a really big part of that, right? We're seeing the introduction of AI, like I said before, digital currencies. We're seeing a whole new creative wave coming in, and it's just like politicians are going to be at the mercy of society and the demands of society. But the problem is I don't see unification of society. So if there's no real unification, then anything that gets implemented is going to create a big problem. Now, remember, when Saturn comes into Aries in 26, officially in 26, he's in detriment, or fall. He's in fall, rather, because he's in exaltation over here in Libra. So he's in really hot Mars-ruled waters. This is the other malefic. So we're getting a malefic-ruled sign, Aries, with a malefic planet, Saturn. Let me see real quick. Where is Mars? And Mars coming in super hot right behind it. Right? Now, this is just a couple of months, April and May. I think April, May of 2026 is pretty freaking intense here, because we also have this really stirring things up. Now, like I was saying before, remember, Uranus in Taurus, let's use World War II as the most recent example. Uranus in Taurus was the time when Hitler was like getting elected and coming into power. And the US didn't get involved until later, but a lot of other nations over in Europe were severely impacted by what was going on, right? And so that was all happening as Uranus was making his way through Gemini. So again, like, we are at that time when something is percolating, the destabilization is happening. And let's go back here a couple of months. Let's keep Mars activated here. I'm going to come back to Jupiter in Taurus, okay? So this is 2024. So next year, we have Jupiter coming into Taurus. Now, I love this because, again, from a personal finance perspective, okay, this is happening in May. Actually, well, that's fine. Okay, so it's happening on May 16th of this year, May 16th, 2023, when Jupiter officially comes into Taurus. And when Jupiter comes into Taurus, he's going to immediately connect with the North Node. So this is, maybe the markets get a boost, get a bump. Your portfolios may perform really great during this time. We have Pluto retrograding back into Capricorn. Again, individual finance is going to be determined by individual decisions. Taurus is about individual finance, right? It's not like the full-on markets. It's based on what you do with your skill and your talent and your life experience and your abilities to generate income. This is why Taurus is known as such a hardworking sign, because you have to work to earn the money. This is where money is earned with labor. So if you can work and enhance your financial well-being, your income, and you can invest that properly and pay attention to the volatility in the markets, because Saturn in Pisces and Jupiter coming into a conjunction with Uranus. Now, this is not like a super tight conjunction. When Jupiter retrogrades here, let's go forward a couple months, we can see that separation getting bigger and bigger. Obviously, this is not in conjunction. But in October-ish, September, October, as Jupiter gets close, he is going to touch kind of the field of Uranus a little bit. So he's really going to be activating that Uranian volatility in the end of 2023. Now, it's very common for markets to crash or big events to happen around the equinox periods, right? September, October, March, April, around those times is when big events happen, okay? We could call them, what's the word they use? I forget what the word they use is, whether you believe they're real or not, but that's usually when they happen. And so as Jupiter comes in, we can kind of see that volatility starting. But when Jupiter comes back, May of 2024, that's when Jupiter really hits Uranus. Now, this is, fortunately, Jupiter is not like retrograding over Uranus. In 2020, yes, we had the we had the Saturn-Pluto conjunction, but then we also had Jupiter going like this against Pluto. Now, Pluto, I really think the Jupiter-Pluto thing was a lot more responsible for what happened in 2020 because Jupiter is a magnifier. He makes everything bigger. And when he comes over a big planet like Uranus, he is just going to blow it up. So when we're blowing up volatility, people can have massive increase and people can have massive decrease depending on how smart you are, really. And then Jupiter is going to be coming into Gemini in 24. And I think this is going to be massive preparation for what's going to happen in 25 and 26, which is when Uranus moves into Gemini. See, Neptune and Pluto both kind of have this like unconsciousness about them. It's like the collective unconscious that is operating. And there's a lot of just like waves of culture that occur. But Uranus is where things come into the conscious mind, into the collective consciousness, where everyone is aware of it. There's hyper awareness there. Like everyone has been, coming into awareness of digital currency and crypto. And I also, just FYI, I don't know how secure gold is going to be, for those of you who might be wondering. A lot of people put their money in gold and silver, but the more and more we move out of the Kali Yuga and the more and more we move toward the Bronze Age, 1800s, 1900s, gold has been, I'm not going to say less relevant. It just has different uses, like with electronics and whatnot. But to have a giant stack of gold bars in some kind of a vault locked away in some house or something, I don't really know that you're ever going to really be like able to, you'll always be able to trade it and do something with it. I think that the world is outgrowing gold as money. I just, from the technology perspective, unless the entire grid crashes, which I don't think is going to happen, but unless the entire grid crashes, gold, I just don't know how much it's going to be. Now, if you want a safe place to put your investment, then gold is great, by all means. I just don't know that the growth is really going to be there. And when Jupiter comes into Uranus, you may see a spike in your gold price, but I don't know how sustainable that's going to be. Okay. Okay. Now, the last thing I wanted to talk about. Okay, here is Uranus coming into Gemini. And then in 2026, July 2026, this is the last thing I really want to talk about. We have Chiron coming into Taurus. Now, Chiron in Taurus, there is a lot, again, connection with money. This is going to be in a square with Pluto throughout 26. And the pain and wounding that Chiron really represents is probably going to be reparative, right? Trying to repair a lot of the stuff, the damage that was done with Saturn coming through Pisces and trying to figure out its way into Aries through 25 and 26. Because that Saturn-Neptune conjunction, I'm just very not optimistic about. Oh, this is why I was talking about the Jupiter thing. Like if we take a look at the severity of Jupiter retrograding back and forth over Pluto in Capricorn, we have to take an equally serious look at Saturn conjunct Neptune moving back and forth between Pisces and Aries. This is a serious transit, okay? And I don't know if I was doing this wrong as I was preparing for this. I was like, when was the last time this happened? I honestly, I moved my clock back so far, 1,000 years. I couldn't find a time when Saturn and Neptune were in Pisces together. I don't know if I can do something with my software. Maybe I overlooked something or I don't know. But there was just something really, I was having a hard time figuring out when the last time Neptune and Saturn came together in Pisces to try to find some kind of a historical reference or a historical event to equate it to. Again, I'm gonna have to go back and look again and maybe do my own Google research, because when I was doing it myself, I was unable to determine that these were ever together in this way, the way they're doing it like this in Pisces. In other signs, yes, but not in Pisces, okay? So that's my concern, is that I don't really have references to what this could possibly bring. I feel like there's a lot more severity, and Chiron coming into Taurus for the next several years after this is going to try really, really, really hard to repair the financial damage. Now, if let's say this, because we know that digital currency is an inevitability, just simply because that is where technology is going. And the youth, the younger generation, right? Gen Z and Gen Alpha, the people who were born with Pluto in Sag and Pluto in Capricorn, they're going to demand it, right? Because technology, convenience, they're not going to let it be anything other than that. So they're going to demand the digital currency. And it's possible that while this massive structure transition is going on, that a war or a conflict takes place and shortages and all this stuff takes place, so that energy and attention is spent looking over here, so that no one is looking over here at what's really going on behind the scenes. All I'm saying is that with Saturn conjunct Neptune, I will say that mainstream media is probably the least trustworthy that it has ever been. Now, Pluto, let's talk about this too. Let me go back to the clock. Okay, so this is again today. I moved the clock back. When Pluto was in Leo back in the 40s and 50s, this is when television became really, really important, specifically in the American culture, in American homes. This was when it started, every household was getting a television. And we also know, again, conspiratorially, okay, this is when the CIA became involved with a lot of things. And because of this opposition, I almost am feeling like there's going to be a death of that. The way Pluto brings, when I say death, I don't mean a complete obliteration. I just mean a transition or a transformation, just that something is going to end. Because of our global connectivity that we've never, ever before had ever in human history. Okay, this whole like global connectivity thing is brand spanking new. We have never had this before. And so there's all these different outlets, and this does give, opportunity for a lot of misinformation, a lot of lies, a lot of conspiracy, a lot of stuff. But I also think because of that, people are more skeptical than ever. And the younger generation, they're again very divided, either activists on behalf of the government or completely against the government. Like it's going to be one way or the other. And there's going to be massive division there. And because of that, because of all this skepticism, and again, Aquarius is very much about truth. That's why they always say, oh, your Aquarius friend is always so conspiracy oriented. And it is true because it's aligned with truth. So is Scorpio and Sag, and even Pisces as well. And it's like, they really want to understand the totality of what's going on and understand all the different moving pieces that make up this big picture. Aquarius is really, it's like, in those crime movies, like where the Grendel's detective gets kicked off the case because he's always acting all unruly and going against orders. So he goes home and he puts all the post-it notes and the pictures and the documents up on the board, and he's got the string all over the place. Like that's very Aquarian, of like trying to connect all of the dots to figure out how everything goes together, and not fully landing or fully trusting what's really going on until you know for a fact that you have the truth. And because the media has played such a huge part in politics and policy and raising our children and all sorts of things, now that we have so many voices out there, like I could start a news channel if I wanted, you could start a news channel if you wanted, right? You could, anyone could, like basically everyone is a news channel ever since the mid 2000s, right? 2005, 2006, we had the advent of Facebook and Twitter and then YouTube, and all these platforms started to really gain speed. That was around the time when Pluto came to Capricorn, by the way. Right? 2008. This is when everyone started getting on those social media platforms. And like, yeah, we had MySpace and stuff before that, like in high school or whatever, but it wasn't like really what it is today until Pluto came into Capricorn. And now with the introduction of TikTok, which got huge throughout the pandemic, TikTok comes in and completely changes the ball game in terms of the algorithm. And so now, like, I'll be talking to my sister. She's like, oh, did you see this video on TikTok? And I'm like, no. And she's like, oh, yeah, because we're not on the same algorithm. Like your algorithm is so specialized to you. We see that with Facebook and Google as well, but it's becoming so much more intricate and specialized that it's very, very common that I have this stream of knowledge and you have this completely different stream of information coming at you. And again, that's not news, right? We've been dealing with that ever since the introduction of the early 2000s or whatever. But it is getting to that point where mainstream news networks are absolutely losing their power, like 100%. We may see the fall of like a big news network like CNN or BBC or something like that, where people just really don't believe. They don't believe so much that they don't view. And when they don't view, the network crumbles down. So the death of a lot of the things that were introduced in the 40s and 50s, specifically the propaganda, comes to a close at this time. People are not going to be as gullible. And even with Saturn, even with Saturn coming into Pisces, I think Pisces brings an extreme of like not gullible at all and like insanely gullible. Like for real. We already saw a lot of that in the past few years, but it's just going to be even that much more pronounced. Okay. There's just a big separation between people who pay attention and people who are wanting to learn and to understand and people who don't. Okay. But generally speaking, this is a period of growth and therefore growing pains. It is growing pains. We as a collective are really needing to learn how to come together, because in the golden age, this is when we as a humanity truly operate as one. But we are down here. And so slowly over the next few thousand years, humanity will get better and better and better. You know, as I was researching the Trita Yuga, which is the Silver Age, they were talking about how this is a time when we won't have any war. And when we say no war, it doesn't mean there won't be conflict. It just means that it won't be like what's going on in Iran or what's going on in Yemen or what went on, you know, in the Middle East or what's happening in China or whatever. China's not in war, but you know what I mean? Like with that tyranny, you know, we have tyranny all over, but it's not going to be like that. It'll be more like a Cold War or like policy war or, you know, that kind of thing. And then of course, when we hit the golden age, there is, we are unified. We are in this beautiful, you know, Garden of Eden type of paradise, if you will, throughout this period of time. Now, you know, so we're learning. We as a collective are learning how to work together. And one of the ways, well, let me stay here. One of the ways that we need to learn how to be together, right, is we need to learn about separation, because the Justice card, scales of justice, right, natural law, Kabbalion, all that kind of stuff. We have to understand the dark in order to understand the light. And in order to understand the light, we must understand the dark, and that we are in this constant cycle all the time, that this is just life, at least life on this earth anyway, in this realm. This is the way the humanity works here. But I do think for you to be empowered, let me just finish this. I've been talking a lot, so sorry about the lengthy video, but for us to really come out of this abundant and wealthy and happy, it really is just about tuning out the noise. You have to tune out the noise, and you can still listen to the news to understand like what a company is doing or what a country is doing, so you know how to invest and whatnot. But I think listening to spirit, listening to your own divinity is more important now than it probably was even in 2020. Because with this, it's just like Capricorn is one thing. Pisces is like a whole different ballgame. Pisces is an energy that very few people can really understand because it is so beyond this. I'm not talking about Pisces people. I'm talking about the archetype of Pisces because it is beyond this known world. Now, will we survive? Yes, of course. Yes, of course we will. But it's confusing. It's a confusing time. Now, at the beginning of 2022, let me go back here. Right? Like we had a lot of stuff going on in Pisces. Where's the sun? Oh, hold on. Let me activate these planets. Okay, like we had a lot going on in Pisces, like, cause it was, I mean, we do every year, but especially last year, you know, we had Mars coming into Pisces, we had the sun, we had Jupiter here, we had, you know, Mercury coming in, Venus came in eventually. It was like, there was always something going on in Pisces. And the beginning of 2022 was just like a very weird, I was talking to my girlfriend. So I reconnected with a friend who she and I were best friends when we were kids. Like we played every single day. And then, you know, I moved to Las Vegas when I was like 14 and we just really lost touch. And at the end of 2021, she and I reconnected and it was like no time had passed. She and I just like immediately we're best friends. Like, she's clearly a soulmate of mine. And I just talked to her just today. And she and I were talking about how crappy 2022 was, specifically at the beginning. I was dealing with my health stuff. She was dealing with her like spiritual crisis, and her husband was going through this stuff. And it was just like a really weird time. And it's just because Jupiter was in Pisces. We have Sun in there. We had Mercury come through there. There's Mercury. And then we had Venus, and then we had Mars coming through there. And like, we just didn't get a Pisces break until Mars left in May. And like, Pisces really like slowed down. I'm not saying everyone had a terrible time, not saying that. Some people did great. Some people did a lot of really great stuff, and that's amazing. But when Saturn comes in here, it creates this like intensification of that. And because it's going to be there for like multiple years, I do think it's going to have a pretty hefty effect on a lot of people. Okay. So just following your heart and following your spirit and staying creative. And because what's going to happen is the world is really going to need happiness. Sorry, I did this completely. I was going to do it like month to month, but it was set to a week. So I had to click a billion times. But, people are going to need happiness. They're going to need beauty. They're going to need entertainment. They're going to need hope. They're going to need positivity. They're going to like really feed off of that, because I'm not saying to take advantage of it, but I am saying that people want to hear it. They want to hear your good stories. They want to hear about your success, because it gives them hope that they can do it too. To become somebody who is an aspirational influence on someone else, like, is going to be the best thing that you can do to help lift up the world, because it's going to be a lot to lift up the world. Okay? So stay bright, shine bright, fall in love, be happy, create, and follow your heart as much as you can. All right? Thank you all so much. You guys know I love you. Have an amazing couple of months until we get into this new astrological configuration. And I'll see you soon. Take care.